Moonbeam, an interlude for the 4th edition D&D Feywild campaign. One of these days, you're going to glow brighter than the stars. You know that, right? Of course I do, Mummy. The elven woman pulled the blankets up, tucking the young fawn into the rickety wooden bed. She stood up, giving the child a quick kiss on the cheek before heading to the room's door. The fawn giggled before diving under the covers and pulling the blankets above her head until the edge caught on her small horn stubs. Sweet dreams, little one. I love you. Love you too. The elf paused at the door, a moment, lovingly watching her daughter, before going to close the door. The fawn rustled in the sheets. What about the moon, Mummy? She sat upright, the bed sheets falling over the rest of her like a patchwork cloak. Like in the stories you tell? The sound of the late-night tavern crowd crept its way through the ajar door. Disparate conversations, the clinking of coins on the bar, the twang of an off-key bard. The elven woman smiled. Darling, you'll put its beauty to shame. She paused and watched her daughter snuggle even further under the blanket. I love you so much. She turned and sauntered into the tavern, carefully closing the door behind her. Even with the door closed, the building's muffled ambiance kept Levira awake for a while, as she lay in bed, telling herself stories of the peoples of shadows that danced around outside her door. Those nights had long since passed. An emptied shot glass slammed down on the bar as Levira spun herself around the bar stool. Juniper chittered from her lap. What's that, June? Another one? The fox buried itself in the fawn's lap. I suppose you're right. Another couldn't hurt. She signaled to the bartender, who poured her another glass. All right, but I gotta see some coin from you, V. She slid a gold coin down towards the bartender, placing it so it just balanced on the edge of the marbled wooden countertop. The bartender went to pick up the coin, but it tipped and fell to the ground. You really are the worst, you know, he said, bending over to pick up the coin. Keep the change, Luke, she said, quickly downing the glass while he was bent over. I would, but you're still short one, V. Levira pulled 2 more from her coin purse, placing them on the counter. Juniper jumped onto the bar and onto Levira's shoulders as she stood up and made her way towards the exit. You're the man, Luke. A cool breeze rolled through the twilit streets of Emalanth as Levira strolled towards the stables at the edge of the city. The colorful striations of the midnight sky above the Fey City seemed to match the flicking of the lanterns placed around the stable hand's home. Levira walked towards the door, knocking a couple times in quick succession. An older fawn, in more knightly attire, opened the door. She dropped a couple coins in their hand and made her way around towards the back. The older fawn rolled their eyes and followed her, reclosing the door behind themselves. You know, it'd be a lot easier if you'd come during daylight hours, right? Oh, come on, Aaron. It wouldn't be so much fun then. The 2 of them got the most alert of the horses ready to go. I'll only be gone a couple of hours. Don't worry. Aaron sighed, having been through this rigmarole before. You know what to do when you got back, they paused. And if something goes wrong, they trailed off. It won't. Levira rode off into the forest, disturbing the flutterlights resting in the long grass beyond the walls. As the horses' hooves hit the ground, whirls of insects jumped from their branches, catching the faintest glows of the suns in their glassy wings, and refracting rainbows across the forest floors. An hour or 2 into the journey, the sound of flowing water began to ripple through the thick air, as Levira approached her destination. The horse and she jumped over the river before coming to a slow by some spires, breaking their way through the grounds. Levira sighed, looking back at the lush, fain forestry on the other side of the river, before turning to the substantially darker region she jumped across into. Motes of ash flitted through the near monochromatic sky, wafting their way between the emptied branches of charcoal-colored trees. Plant life and underbrush grew and creeped from the root networks that persisted, but their manifestations reflected the alien landscape. Fractal-veined patterns lined their leaves, as their nature seemed to be in perpetual juxtaposition. New and growing, new and growing spring, New and growing sprigs on older, wilted stalks, leaves in wilt and decay that curled around plant stems for support, as their stunted stalks weren't yet mature. The smell of coal-soaked water permeated the wandering fog atop this fell wilderness. Levira tied the horse to a nearby tree, patting it on its head and promising to be back shortly. June chittered, hiding from within her cloak, clearly unhappy to be in this environment. Levira took it and lit the lantern stashed in the saddlebag. She carefully walked further into the woods before coming across a large hollow in the ground. Carefully making her way down, the fiery lantern light danced upon the tunnel's walls, highlighting rough chalk drawings upon its surface. The cavern eventually opened up and dropped off. Levira swayed the lantern around a bit, looking for a thin cord affixed to the cavern wall. Upon finding it, she pulled, drawing forth a closed flame lantern attached to a squeaking pulley. She unscrewed the bottom, placing a single silver coin and a folded-up piece of paper into the base before replacing it. Levira opened the lantern's door and poured a coarse powder into the oil reservoir. Still looking for help. The planeswalker might have found someone. Stay warm. Love you. Moonbeam. She then made her way back to the horse and returned to Emalanth just as the suns were beginning to crest over the horizon.